It is the most disgusting way of achieving things. But this guy here, there's nothing I wouldn't put past him. There's nothing that this man won't do. The way that he speaks, now he's an excellent speaker, you know, I'll give him that. But that's what makes him so dangerous. Because he honeycoats his words so carefully. Of course, his speeches are co-written or written by others. But he's a master orator, and like Clinton, his words are sweet and dripped in honey, and they make you feel safe, so that the sheeple at home feel like their president actually cares about them. He actually is doing things to try to protect them. When the thing that they need protection from the most, from these jokers, they're the most dangerous people to the American people. As often is the case. I mean, go back in history. It's always the governments that are they're the most dangerous force against their own people. But let's listen to more of this fucking bullshit.
If you want to vote no, that's your choice. But these proposals deserve a vote. Because in the 2 months since Newtown, more than 1,000 birthdays, graduations, anniversaries have been stolen from our lives by a bullet from a gun.
Mm-hmm. And that's how they do it, right? 1,000, so 1,000 people have died, as they say, or whatever. And they use the image of graduations and weddings and birthdays and stuff like that, so that the average person feels affected by these 1,000 people who have died. When you think about it, in reality, a country of 330 plus million people, the stats have shown that gun-related deaths are not on the rise; they're actually on the decline. So, you know, I can recall times like way back when that, you know, things were quite violent in the United States, and gun violence, cities like New York were often, you know, associated with being highly, you know, dangerous. I think, you know, you think back to the 70s and the movies like, of course I was just a baby, but the movies like Death Wish, you know, these movies that showed the American culture, which we've seen, you know, growing up, how much violence there was. And really, the trend has actually changed in many ways. So he doesn't really have much to stand on here when it comes to innocent people being killed. There's always innocent people being killed. There's always way more innocent people being killed by the actions of their own government. When we talk about soldiers, people like Pat Tillman, right, that serve their country and are murdered, you know. People that die suspiciously, the people of Sandy Hook, whoever died, some people had to die, right, to fulfill that crazy lunatic idea. But this is what they do. They try to convince you that there's such a horrible, horrible problem out there. And he's going to show you a bunch of people here to prove it.
More than 1,000. One of those we lost was a young girl named Nydia Pendleton. She was 15 years old. She loved fig Newtons and lip gloss. She was a majorette. She was so good to her friends, they all thought they were her best friend. Just 3 weeks ago, she was here in Washington with her classmates, performing for her country at my inauguration. And a week later, she was shot and killed in a Chicago park after school.
Poor girls should never have performed at that inauguration. Somebody had to be the example, right? It's a perfect ploy. Now, it's saying I don't know anything about this girl. She might have died just because of some horrible crime, but really the horrible crime that exists within the United States, most of it is due to poverty, right? Most of it's due to these motherfuckers in these suits who sit up here and make millions, and you know, the lobbyists, the corporations, the 0.01%, right? That all the money goes to them. They control these people. They put them in office. They tell them what to do. You ever confused about who controls the president? Just watch Reagan's inauguration speech when the CEO of Merrill Lynch, Donald Reagan, R-E-E-G-A-N, I believe, not Reagan, but Donald Reagan leaned over and told President Reagan to speed it up because he was taking too long. He was getting all long-winded and reminiscing about Hollywood, perhaps, right? And I gotta speed it up, is what the president said. Nobody tells the president to speed it up if the president was really in charge. The president is a puppet, right? And he serves the banks. He serves the Federal Reserve.
Just a mile away from my house.
Wait, mile away from his house. He lives in Washington. And he's talking about Chicago. Anyways, it's dumb.
Nate and Cleo are in this chamber tonight, along with more than 24 Americans whose lives have been torn apart by gun violence.
Right, and they're right next to the First Lady. And guess who's on the other side? They got the First Lady. They got another victim here. Then they got Jill Biden. And then they have that blonde chick from, remember? The girl from, I can't remember her name, Caitlin something, who was the teacher, you know, who did a lot of snorting but not a lot of tearing when she did her little acting job on Sandy Hook.
They deserve a vote.
You gonna make those fat people stand? That's cruel.
They deserve a vote.
This is how they do it.
Gabby Giffords deserves a vote.
Well, I got Gabby there.
The families of Newtown deserve a vote. The families of Aurora deserve
There she is. Remember?
The families of Oak Creek and Tucson and Blacksburg and the countless other communities ripped open by gun violence, they deserve a simple vote.
Yep, they're all there. They've got them sitting next to the First Lady, the second lady. I don't know what you call Joe Biden's wife there, but the VP's wife. And this is how they do it. This is how they control public opinion. This is how they're trying to sway Congress, but they're not going to give Congress the real vote on it anyways. They're just going to go in and fucking take the weapons. We already seen that. That's what we're seeing with Dorner. Right? The drones are up. Let's let this vomit fest play on.
They deserve a simple vote. Our actions will not prevent every senseless act of violence in this country. In fact, no laws, no initiatives, no administrative acts will perfectly solve all the challenges I've outlined tonight. But we were never sent here to be perfect. We were sent here to make what difference we can, to secure this nation, expand opportunity, uphold our ideals through the hard, often frustrating, but absolutely necessary work of self-government. We were sent here to look out for our fellow Americans, the same way they look out for one another, every single day. usually without fanfare, all across this country. We should follow their example. We should follow the example of a New York City nurse named Menchu Sanchez.
There she is.
When Hurricane Sandy plunged her hospital into darkness, she wasn't thinking about how her own home was faring. Her mind was on the 20 precious newborns in her care and the rescue plan she devised that kept them all safe. We should follow the example of a North Miami woman named Desaline Victor. When Desaline arrived at her polling place, she was told the wait to vote might be 6 hours. As time ticked by, her concern was not with her tired body or aching feet, but whether folks like her would get to have their say. And hour after hour, a throng of people stayed in line to support her. Because Desaline is 102 years old. And they erupted in cheers when she finally put on a sticker that read, "I voted."
Yeah. And everyone's got to cheer for the old black lady. I mean, God bless her. She is a great example, right? And that's how they do it. I mean, they're going to use real people. You know, real people who have suffered or have done heroic things. You know, there's a ton of great Americans out there. Probably more great Americans out there than there are really bad ones, you know. Although it just seems like the really bad ones seem to get elected, right? Maybe it's their psychopathic nature that allows them to rise to the top because they're willing to step on anybody, do anything that their masters in the Federal Reserve and in the banking cartel of the world bid them. You know, the president is, you know, it's listening to him, it's almost like Bill Clinton. Again, you know, honey-coated words to take away the rights of Americans. I mean, Americans right now don't live in a free country, you know. The free country ended when 9/11 happened, and the Patriot Act was brought in. All these departments of security, Homeland Security, all these TSA, horrible abominations like the National Defense Authorization Act. I mean, none of these things are by accident. I mean, people, you know, you got to remember that Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act on New Year's Eve. I think it was around 10 o'clock. 10:30 in the evening, when everybody was out having a good time. He slipped it in. It tells you how evil the president is. The fact that he would do something like that, right? They use people. They use them as pawns, as puppets, you know. This is how they do it. We've seen it. This Dorner thing, it's all too perfect. It's all too convenient. It's all part of the plan. The plan that, you know, saw Mr. Obama, the moment that he knew he was reelected, the first thing that was on his mind was the United Nations gun grab. To push that through. So many shootings that have happened since then that have been just plastered and pasted in front of your face by the corporate media that works for the same engine that controls the presidency. That's how they do it. It's all part of the plan. You've got to disarm the people if you want to control them. If you want to have a dictatorship, if you want to have a totalitarian state, you cannot have an armed population. You can't have it. And that is why they are doing everything they can to convince you that you'll be safer when people can't have any more than 10 rounds and pop guns you know?